So I once was in bondage, but now I am free. I have never been much of a singer, but that old song rings in my heart today as I think back over the eventful years of the past, but with a meaning far different from what was in the mind of the hymn writer as he penned those lines. I once was in bondage, a slave, in the old days preceding the Civil War. Owned, but owning nothing, valued in dollars and cents, as any other chattel, to be bought and sold, traded or worked, even as a horse or cow, as the financial needs or desires of the owner dictated. But now I am a free man, a citizen of the United States, a property owner, and boss of my own ranch. So these are the first words in the remarkable memoir of Robert Ball Anderson, and we're going to discuss his life today on Storytelling on the Plains. A little bit of a different opening, but...
Just before we start, just a little shout out to Jesse Jackson, who passed away last night.
Yep. 84 he was.
And a remarkable civil rights leader.
Yep.
So he's kind of fitting.
Yes. and while we're giving a shout out, I forgot to mention last week as well, we have one patron supporter that provides us a nice chunk of money per year, and I want to we got paid and they pay I get paid $76. I know there's a little fee that goes to Patreon, but I really appreciate that because
thank you.
$76 is essentially 3 months of hosting of our podcast episodes. Yeah. So every little bit helps.
Do we need to do a fundraiser drive like NPR?
I think they have more viewers than us, though.
We could find something to give our Patreon supporters. I'll find something around here. Something with our
we got this Mets coaster.
We got a coaster. We'll get Storytelling on the Plains coasters.
Oh gosh, there's a gentleman on YouTube that I was following, and I've significantly cut back my internet time so that I can get more stories written. I got some of my own stories I want to put out on Substack and maybe make some money with that. And this gentleman was putting out 25 videos every day that were 3 to 5 minutes each, and he's ramping it up this political season. And I'm just like, good for him that he can do it, but
I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah,
I admire anyone who does.
And I'm just like, no, it's enough that we're doing one a week, and it's a lot of work. And I also want to add in my own personal stuff and start my own. I mean, I have my Substack account, but I want to do video and read my stories and try and generate some money that way. And it's a little easier publishing route than submitting, and getting, hundreds of denials or rejections a year. So I'm just going to do it on my own. But I just don't know how this guy does it, and it became overwhelming for me. And with my PTSD, I get overwhelmed very easy. So I've cut back from even watching that guy's videos. I just too much stuff going on in the world. And
there is.
And our brains were not designed. This isn't a science podcast, but there are studies out there. Our brains were not designed for the amount of information we have shoved at us every day. And so I'm just, this is important to me, so this is what I focus my time on, is this podcast. And Robert Ball Anderson is a very interesting guy. This easily could have been another 10-parter. There are many studies and news articles written about him and analyzing black men coming out after the Civil War, after slavery ended. And so I tried to keep it contained to one episode, but just know that there is so much information out there. I did get a copy about a year ago of his memoir, and it took me about a year to find it because we'll get to it in the episode, but it was just printed. and I don't think he ever printed it outside of Northwest Nebraska. So there aren't a lot of copies, and his wife made a subsequent edition with a little addendum she put on the end of it, and she has enough for her own episode, so I'm going to do an episode on her. But it's about 100 pages, and it took a while to get all the information, and then History Nebraska has had a couple of articles, and then some other folks have written within other books about him, and it is all really neat and interesting, especially if you want to learn about black men out in the West after the Civil War. So I am leaving a lot out. This easily could have been many, 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 many parts. And if you hear noises clinking around and stuff, our new cat Jazz is running around playing with all of the toys in the house. So that's what those noises are. So we're going to get into Robert Ball Anderson now. Robert Ball Anderson was born into slavery on March 1st, 1843 at the Ball Plantation in Greene County, Kentucky. Darrell D. Wax writes in Robert Ball Anderson, ex-slave, a pioneer in western Nebraska, 1884 to 1930. He was among 5 children born while his mother lived on a farm owned by Colonel Robert Ball. So,
if you were a slave back then, your last name was the name of your owner?
Yeah, if you had a last name, it was usually the name of your owner. And also, I combined a whole bunch of stuff about his early life together, so I apologize ahead of time if I messed anything up, but I think I got it all right. But yeah, oftentimes, whatever your master's last name was is what your name is because they own you. And it's the same, like when we take Puck to the vet, they call him Puck North.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so before anyone thinks otherwise, I'm not comparing owning a cat to owning a human, but that's how they thought of it. And so if you did, especially after the war, if you didn't know who your parents were, you just took your master's last name. Most of them did. Their father resided on the neighboring plantation of Alfred Anderson, so that's where you get Robert's full name, Robert Ball Anderson, and we'll get to when he takes his dad's last name later on. So their father resided on the neighboring plantation of Alfred Anderson, who in 1860 held 67 slaves, ranking him among the largest slave owners in the Commonwealth. Robert's master operated a more modest farm, raising hemp and flax. And I had hemp seed hearts today with flax with breakfast.
Oh, nice.
That's a horrible comparison, considering that was all processed by slaves. Sorry. My mind sometimes just thinks of things and says it, and then I'm like, yeah, I probably should have just shut up. On the eve of the Civil War, he held 17 slaves, ranging in age from a 60-year-old male to a baby girl of 2 years. The slaves occupied 4 small log cabins. Robert's mother, a house servant, lived with her 5 children in a cabin measuring 12 feet square. So imagine shoving 6 people into a room 12 feet square. And that's where you have to live. You don't have a choice. It's not even a choice of, I'm going to save some money and get a bigger place. You're a slave. That's what you're given. And that sucks. In the Nebraska History article, Robert Ball Anderson's Journey from Slavery to Affluence by David L. Bristow, Anderson's long journey from Kentucky to Nebraska is described as a story of persistence and personal triumph, and in other ways, a demonstration of the obstacles he faced in trying to become truly independent. And I'm going to read from that right now. His earliest memories were of log cabins, one-room huts where the slaves were housed, pretty much as pigs in a pen. The master, he writes, was not deliberately cruel. It was merely the custom of the times, when it was thought that the colored race needed no more care than a hog or cow, and got considerably less than a horse. The master's wife was cruel. When Anderson was 6, she had his mother sold to a slave trader. He never saw his mother again. On another occasion, the mistress tied Anderson and beat him nearly to death with a rawhide whip. The sores on his body took a long time to heal. The sore in my mind, he writes, has not entirely healed yet. And this man was in his 60s, 70s when he wrote that in his memoir. He was very late in age. His wife helped him write the book. I'm just trying to place the age. I think he wrote the book in the 30s, and he was born. So yeah, he like early 70s maybe, and those wounds don't heal. And I can attest to that's probably entirely true because I experienced similar memories. You know, the physical wounds are gone, but the ones in my mind are not. It was one of those unjust beatings, one of the many that left his body looking like a board that is full of knots, that led Anderson to consider running away. He was 21. The Civil War had entered its 4th bloody year, and a Union Army recruiter was said to be just 20 miles away. And now, this bit I'm going to read to you, I have found it in a couple of places, and then I have found in a couple of other places a different story about how he left the plantation. So, but instead of running, Anderson went to his master and told him his intentions. At first, the master was angry, but in the end agreed to let Anderson go. Perhaps he felt that the war was all but lost and slavery doomed. Anderson doesn't say. We had quite a talk and parted friends, he writes. I know that some of Robert's things in his memoir is still looking with rose-colored glasses. He's always trying to find the positive. You know, someone treats him badly because he's black, and he's always trying to find the positive in things. So I lean toward this is Robert's account of what happened, and that's probably the true one. There are other stories that say that he just ran away, and knowing the kind of man that he was, I don't think he did that. This seems more like something Robert would do. So in the fall of 1864, Anderson joined the Union Army by signing up at a recruiting office in Lebanon, Marion County. He joined the Army under the name Robert Ball and served with the 125th Colored Infantry. He earned $13 a month. That's $268.38 in 2026. It's not a lot of money, but today.
Well,
but,
for him.
Yeah, but for
I
him,
assume this is the first time he ever made money.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the Civil War ended 6 months later, Anderson still had to fulfill his 3-year enlistment. And he gets transferred a lot, and I tried to keep track of the timeline because I went through 6 different sources, and like one source would say he was transferred to Kansas, and then the other source will say he was transferred to Fort Leavenworth. So you have some has more detail than others, and I was trying to fit them all together to make it flow a little better. So he was transferred to Missouri, and then his regiment was sent to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where he belonged to one of the troops of Buffalo soldiers that corralled the Indians on their reservation. During this time, he also spent time in New Mexico Territory, Texas, and Colorado, serving as an infantryman, and took his father's last name, Anderson. So it wasn't until he left the Army, once he mustered out, he took his dad's last name. Of those 3 years, he spent a year attached to Fort Bliss in Texas. Darrell Wax wrote in The Odyssey of an Ex-Slave, Robert Ball Anderson's Pursuit of the American Dream, a cholera epidemic ravaged outposts along the Santa Fe Trail during 1867, while Fort Davis in New Mexico was the scene of a scurvy outbreak the next year. Dysentery and other intestinal and stomach disorders were common. During the winter months of 1866 to 1867, Robert was himself sick and unable to participate in company activities or duties. So basically everybody's getting sick from one degree to another. And, hopefully you don't get cholera because you're probably going to die. And that's just how it was on the frontier. That's a risk you had. According to Outside America, Race, Ethnicity, and the Role of the American West in National Belonging by Dan Moos, Anderson was mustered out in the late summer of 1867 in Missouri and then discharged with his company soon thereafter in Louisville, Kentucky. He did return to Greene County in the plantation, but he found conditions grim and unappealing, and he felt everything was in chaos. So, there's nothing there for him, and he's a free man. But I can also see where that's why he went back there. That was the only life he knew before he joined the Army, and he is probably thinking maybe things are better since the war's over and we're all free. But according to him, all he did was find chaos, and you'll see throughout his life, he just wants a peaceful life, do a good job, make some money. He's not looking.
Well, and I think it's a little naive for anyone to think, oh, the Civil War's over, slaves are free, everything goes back. No. The South didn't just release everybody.
Yeah.
Everything didn't just go hunky-dory and, all the slaves went loose one day. And no, that's not what happened at all. They held on to many of them up until the 60s in weird ways. They just came up with other ways to have them in other ways. And it really wasn't until I should actually say the late 60s that the civil rights movement with Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King and all them kind of brought all of the old things that still held black men, women, and children in certain conditions that were just identical to slavery. It was just either extra steps or extra words.
You had the Jim Crow laws because there were Wilmington, North Carolina, Wilmington, South Carolina. In anyway, there was a very, very prosperous black society after the Civil War, and they found ways to screw with that. And then you had the redlining, which was ways that you segregate communities, so you keep the black people poor. And then you have Jim Crow laws, which, you're standing outside of the local store waiting for your mom to come out with the groceries. Boom, get arrested for loitering, and now you do 2 years in jail. Because technically it's loitering, but if you were a white man, they would just be like, hey man, what are you doing? Oh, I'm waiting for my mom to come out. Oh, all right, and you would go on. But because you're a black man, oh, now we're going to arrest you, put you in jail. You had the Tulsa race riots. You had very, very influential black community there, very wealthy community, and when they couldn't push them out, they burned them out. So we just had slavery under a different name.
And we still do.
Yeah.
Don't make anyone think that, it's not over.
Yeah. It's
still
not.
going on in different ways, and it's still going on in ways that people, unless you're a part of that community, really don't understand.
Yeah.
So.
And you and I, Connor, could sit and talk about it all day because we've read about it. We've had our friends tell us about it, but
even I don't understand.
Yeah, but we'll never understand it fully because we don't live that life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things Anderson paid attention to while in the service was all the land he wanted to be able to own that he came across, and he wanted to be able to own some of his because there were all the different acts that in Nebraska we most famously know of the Homestead Act, but there were other acts where you could go out and get land, and he wanted a piece of land that was his own that he could prosper on. And so he paid attention to that going on while he was still in the service and started saving his money so that when he got out, he could maybe do something.
Now, since we have to be fair here, and since we do talk a lot about all cultures as much as we can, a little bit ironic, he was a slave, became a buffalo soldier, pushed the natives out, took their land, and thought that was the right thing. I know that's probably... It's just one of those weird things people should maybe think about every now and then. It's I'm not blaming him. Yeah. It's not like everybody did it. That was the thing to do. But it is kind of interesting that there just wasn't necessarily a lesson learned.
Yeah.
And not that would have done him any good if he didn't own land.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm not trying to defend him or accuse him, but I do think that there is a little bit of irony.
A little bit of irony going
there.
on. Yeah, yeah. So Anderson wrote, "It is to that determination formed when a soldier that I owe my independence today." And I think that's the main thing that drove him, was he wanted to be on his own piece of land where nobody could tell him what to do.
Another irony.
And, yeah.
You're only free when you kill for your country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And one day when we get to agate, that's one of the cool stories that I've learned over the years is James Cook, and he spent time in the Southwest chasing Apaches. And when he moved to agate, he didn't want anything to do with Native Americans, and he ended up, his closest friends in life were Red Cloud, American Horse. I'm trying to think of some of those are the two most famous ones I can think of off the top of my head right now. But he became very, very good friends with Native Americans and had a complete turnaround of his philosophy and was like, yeah, what I did probably wasn't right. And his autobiography was hard for me to read because he laid it out there in the beginning of his autobiography about how much he hated Indians. And then later on in life, he got to know them and learned about them. And yes, it was Lakota rather than Apache,
Yeah,
but
kind of had a Kevin Costner Dances with Wolves moment.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Robert. He began saving his army pay and purchased land in western Iowa. Unfortunately, he bought the land from an untrustworthy agent in Davenport. When he arrived and first saw his piece of land, he realized it was poor and there was nothing he could do but sell the parcel at a loss. So he bought it from some jerk, and he bought the land sight unseen. And this isn't surprising because even though he served his 3 years in the military, this man is a slave. His entire life he only ever learned a few words, and he learned how to sign his name. He was an easy mark for this scammer. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate. But not to be beaten, Anderson worked in Tabor, Iowa then at a local brick yard before moving to do work with a local farmer. His job in Tabor ended in 1868 when construction on the building ended. He then obtained employment on a nearby farm owned by G.D. Gregory. Anderson was a good hand and worked for Gregory until the spring of 1870. In 1870, he moved to eastern Nebraska, staking a homestead claim in Butler County for 80 acres. So he's still not out here in our neck of the woods yet, but he's still not giving up. He still has that dream of owning land. Anderson said in his memoir, it was the first Nebraska homestead claimed by a black man. I did not have time to thoroughly check that out, but it is, every time I talk to somebody who knows about Robert Ball Anderson, his first black homesteader out here, they get it a little mixed up. They think his homestead out here in western Nebraska was it, but his first one was in eastern Nebraska in Custer County, or Butler County. And it might be a little bit more legend, but it also does not surprise me that it's 1870. He probably is the first black one. I don't know. I haven't.
There's not a whole lot of anybody out here.
Yeah.
And the ones that were out here, we kind of got rid of.
Yes,
so.
Because all the ones that came out here that were a part of Empire and came out in that
was later. Right?
That was later.
Yeah, that was later. Empire and Hope.
Yeah. So I honestly believe that he is correct in writing that. His farm was not a success. Though he held on for 10 years, low farm prices, drought, and a grasshopper plague resulted in his loss of his claim in 1881. I lost this land through crop failure. 1 year the grasshoppers came and ate up everything. Then came 4 years of drought when everything burned up. I lost everything I had. And in 1881, I went to Kansas and worked in a railroad construction camp as a cook. So today, we have different forms of irrigation today out in Nebraska, and back then we didn't. You just had the water that you had. We had some irrigation, but...
Well, the kind of irrigation that they probably did is what's still done today, and that's you dig a trough.
Yeah, the drip irrigation. Or, oh, no.
Not drip irrigation. Trowel, where you dig a trowel. Why is the name escaping me right now?
And I know what you mean, and I don't know the name of it.
But they basically, they do what has been done since time immemorial. You dig a trench irrigation, that's what's called, where you dig a trench, and you basically dig several trenches, and up on the high part is where you bury your seeds, and then the low part is where you run your water. Okay. And so run along those trenches, and that's how you utilize using your water efficiently to get it down all the way to your crops and back up. And Ball Anderson probably did what's called dry irrigation, which is still done up in Alliance, and that's exactly what it sounds like. There's no irrigation. It's just relying off of the land and the weather, and that's very, very dangerous. Box Butte County, as far as I know, is one of the few counties that really get into lands where they don't need to. But even there, it's with the weather we've been having and the climates, it's becoming even there. We can't do that anymore. Yeah. But you'll still see that every now and then. You'll see cornfields with no trenches, no pivots, and you're like, how did that grow? Like, it's just Mother Nature doing its thing. Yeah, yeah. So, and when you figure he was there for 10 years, 1 year the grasshoppers ate everything, and 4 years was drought. Mm-hmm. You've got 5 out of your 10 years that you weren't able to produce anything. And the best example I can give is there was a couple, they still live up in Henry, but they used to do a strawberry festival every year. And it was every other year the hail was killing their crop, and they eventually just gave up. They have some strawberries in a greenhouse that's just for them, but they had to stop doing the festival because it's like it takes a lot to plan the little festival up in Henry, and man, they got, I would say they probably had 1,000 or more people come on that day, and for it to not happen every other year because of the hail, they were just like, we can't keep investing the money in this. And unfortunately, back in 1881, there was no such thing as crop insurance. At least I don't think there was. No. And especially, and if you were black, forget about it, even if there was. But even to this day, where anybody can get crop insurance, you can't get it on any crop. There's actually, I think, only about 4 crops in the United States that can be insured. Okay. I know wheat and corn is 2 of them. Okay. And the others are grains. I think they're all grains. So you can't have a strawberry farm. Yeah. And insurance. So if hail comes to a cornfield, the farmers is going to get some insurance or compensation for it. But those people know, and that really does kind of kill our agriculture in the Midwest, because we really do have good land to do all sorts of things, all sorts of crops, all sorts of produce. But if the government's refusing to insure us, the farmer just can't do it. You can't risk it. Yeah. So Robert was now 38 years old, but wasn't prepared to give up. He quit the railroad and spent 3 years as a farmhand in Kansas, saving every penny he could. So he's doing these jobs to save some money, and then he keeps going back to farming. In 1884, he headed to western Nebraska and took a claim under the Timber Culture Act in 1886. This act required you to plant 10 acres of trees. Robert knew what we all know now. The idea was good, he observed, but the ones who conceived it did not know anything about our soil or the requirements to make such a forest grow. And if you've been to western Nebraska, there are a couple of patches where the land is just right for, like you think of Smiley Canyon or Sowbelly Canyon. Sowbelly Canyon and Smiley Canyon and a lot of those around there have all been replanted because there's been so many devastating fires. Been replanted by the Boy Scouts, actually. Yep. And you can always tell because humans do this really weird thing they cannot not plant in lines. In rows. And it is actually it's a study, because my husband and I talk about this. It's actually a true study that they do. It's like, it's weird. Humans can't do what nature does. We are too meticulous. No matter if we try so not to be. So it has to be in lines. Yep. Even if we try not to be, we end up putting them in lines. So, yeah.
So living in Box Butte County, he built himself a sod house. He added a log cabin later, but he then spent the next 3 years in eastern Nebraska as a railroad cook to save even more money. So he's got his piece of land, he planted his trees, and I'm sure he was coming out here to check on them, but his main source of income was still as a cook back east. So he's still plugging away trying to make something of himself. When he had accumulated $1,600, a considerable sum in those days, he decided to invest to build capital for his farm. He loaned the money at interest. He loaned the money at interest, but the borrower took the money and left the state. So he's got $1,600 saved. And it's like, Connor, you came to me and you're like, dude, can I borrow your $1,600? Yeah, I'll give it to you at 2% interest. And then you just took off and disappeared. And so he swindled again. So once again, Anderson was broke. And that $1,600, yeah, that's $56,988.48 in 2026 money. And Connor, if you ever borrowed $56,988.48 from me and you just disappeared, I would find you.
I would find you.
Anderson could have given up after being swindled again, because he easily was able to find jobs as cooks and farm hands. You know, he could find work, but you know, that's not what he wanted to do. So to work his farm, he had to take out a loan himself, and he spent the next 10 years repaying that debt. It kind of reminds me of college loans. You know, even if you have some money to pay for college, it gets eaten up, and then you have to take a loan out, and then it takes you 10, 20 years to pay it back. My husband and I, it took us 17 to pay his back.
Yeah.
I lived alone, he writes, saved, worked hard, lived as cheaply as I could, and before long I found that I had some money to put in the bank. So remember, he's getting into his 40s now, and he's still alone, not married. He's just so focused on this one goal in life. And if he married and had kids, he's not going to be able to save to do this. So finally, things start to go Anderson's way. He began to prosper. He traveled a lot as well. So he's still single, and he's got a little bit of extra money. So he traveled. He saw most of the United States, and he also traveled to Cuba and Mexico, as a tourist. That's kind of cool, because I'm 55, and I still ain't made it to Cuba or Mexico. Been to 35 states, so I got a ways to catch up to Robert. Anderson had escaped slavery, but he was still living in a world with racism and racist ideals. According to the National Park Service, the county's black population, so Box Butte County, the county's black population in 1910 was 55, under 1% of the population. Many were laborers who had come to the Alliance area as Burlington workers. And in case you don't know, the Burlington Railroad is still huge in Alliance. Mm-hmm. I think if the Burlington Railroad pulled out of Alliance, that town collapses, even today.
Well, they've merged.
Burlington Northern, yeah.
Didn't Burlington
they merged
with BNSF?
Yeah, they merged with
so it's Burlington
Santa Fe.
Northern Santa Fe, BNSF, yeah.
But if the railroad ever pulled out of Alliance, that town's going to die.
It would definitely, it would make you wonder what would happen to it. It's kind of like the sugar factory is to us. It's just one of those major. Mm-hmm. It's probably actually a little more than what the sugar factory is to us. Personally, I think if the sugar factory pulled out, Scotts Bluff would survive because of the hospital. Mm-hmm. And the hospital serves all of western Nebraska, so it's got its location kind of going for it. But it wouldn't fizzle out. Well, but neither would Alliance. It wouldn't completely fizzle out. It would do what every other town that lost its railroad does. It just shrinks.
Yeah, and hopefully it doesn't go the way some other towns did and disappear completely.
Because Alliance is still the county seat of Box Butte.
Yeah.
So
and you
for
still,
that reason alone, it won't ever go away.
And Highway 2, you have to come through Alliance.
Yeah, that's true. If you want to go through 2 to get to Hay Springs.
Yeah, so it would probably become more of a service town rather than
a cute little community.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
what it is now. I like Alliance.
Yeah.
I think the roads are cute. I think the houses are cute. And the whole town's just really cute.
Yeah, yeah. So Quintard Taylor wrote in African American Men in the American West, 1528 to 1999. By 1918, Anderson owned 2,000 acres and was the largest black landholder in the state. That's a lot of acres for 1918. For anyone. At that time, he had around 50 head of horses, and as such, most of his land was for pasture for raising cattle and horses. He continued traveling as well. While Anderson was visiting his brother in 1922 in Forest City, Arkansas, he met Daisy Graham, a school teacher. I'm smiling at the name Graham because I just watched this YouTube video about this American dude that moved to the UK, and Graham happened to be one of the words he was talking about that's pronounced differently depending on where you're at in the US and differently in the UK and Europe. So I'm just kind of smiling because I learned that it's Graham, and I noticed my husband slightly pronounces that H.
Cram.
Yeah, there you go.
Cram cracker.
But again, we're not a etymology podcast, so there you go. They were married on March 19th, 1922, 30 days after they met. She was 21, he was 79.
And she accepted, and so did he.
Yes. She accepted the marriage proposal knowing full well it was a marriage of convenience. And I am going to do a separate episode on Daisy. But this marriage meant security for her and her family, who moved to Nebraska as well. And we're going to do Daisy, and we'll touch more on the marriage in another episode. But
Daisy was black as well, right?
Yes, she was black as well.
That's probably important to mention.
Yes.
When we say security.
Yeah. I was going to get into that in a second. After slavery ended, her family struggled, because they're in Arkansas, and we know even today the issues with race relations in the Deep South. And in 1922, it was worse then, and they were struggling. Even though Daisy was a school teacher, they still struggled a lot. And so when, for whatever reason, Robert liked Daisy, he is 79, and they did never have any children, but she did see it as, this is security for me and my family, and we might be able to do well. I didn't look into Robert's brother who lived in the same city, because that's what he went down there for, was to see his brother. But presumably everybody was struggling because.
Oh yeah, and what Daisy did is not far out of the norm of what any woman did back then. Yeah. To make sure that she was secure, if she had to be. If that means marrying someone older, there's some. I think it's the Pride and the Prejudice actually suggests that it's better to marry older men. I think it might have been Jane Austen who said that. I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, and
kind of gives you the idea of you want an older man who's quite a bit older than you, to teach you how to be a woman. Which is weird.
Okay.
Yeah,
but for
that Pride and Prejudice thing.
Yeah. And I have to admit, when I read that and that she was 21 and he was 79, I literally go, oh. And then I kept reading, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Her and her family are struggling, and they want something better for themselves, the whole family. And here's an offer from Robert. So, and from all accounts, they did end up loving each other, and it just may not have been the normal what you think of man and woman getting married. That whatever.
And as long as both parties are consenting and are of the age to consent, then it's fine.
Yeah. So. We'll go more into detail about that when we do the episode on Daisy. There's an interesting book that goes into depth about what it was like for Anderson, who lived near Hemingford, which was a white town. The whites around his homestead were generally accepting of him. One unidentified man said of him, "If there was ever a gentleman, if I've ever known one, it was Robert Anderson." And I'm going to read a long quote here from Outside America, Race, Ethnicity, and the Role of the American West in National Belonging by Dan Moose, because it provides a detailed description of what it was like for Anderson, who, even though he was liked, he was still black, and he still had to endure the racism of his day. Most of it is discussing the publishing of his memoir and things around that. Robert Ball Anderson marketed his From Slavery to Affluence, Memoirs of Robert Anderson, Ex-Slave, and that was published in 1927, to his neighbors with the help of a local paper, the Hemingford Ledger. The announcement of the publication of his book, printed on the Ledger's presses, declared, "Robert Anderson, well-known colored man and old homesteader, has prepared a little book, his memories, telling something of his life and conditions in slavery and his efforts to get on top." So you can already hear little digs there, you know, Robert, a well-known colored man, you know, and he's prepared a little book. So it's all dismissive of him, even though he's liked and the newspaper's publishing this in their paper, it's still dismissive.
Yeah, I wonder how much the books would have sold if they didn't say it was from a colored man.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Robert Anderson.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know.
No.
If no one told you, you wouldn't know.
Robert Anderson is very much a stereotypical white man's name.
Yeah. Very, very. I mean, if you just went with, Robert Anderson, a well-known businessman of western Nebraska, and left it at that, the book could have been a bestseller out here.
Yep. And then he could have got picked up by a major publisher and sold even more. The blurb reminded readers, anyone desiring a copy to get it from Uncle Bob Anderson or his wife, or at the Ledger office. The supply is limited. Get yours now before they are all gone. No evidence presently exists that Anderson tried to sell his book outside of western Nebraska. Anderson's wife, Daisy, brought his text back to life in 1967 when she composed a 19-page edition From Slavery to Affluence entitled Have You No Shame, that was addressed to white Americans who have historically ignored racial inequalities. So she wrote the addendum in 67. We're in the civil rights era then, and she's ticked that things haven't changed. In all this time, things have not changed. And here's my husband's book about what it was like to be a damn slave. And pay attention and stop being like this.
How old was Daisy in 1967? Because I know she was considerably younger.
67. She was born in 1900.
Okay,
yeah.
So 67, okay.
Yeah. And in 27, when she did the book, Robert was 79 and 83, 84 when the book came out. And we'll get to it here in a minute, but Daisy, he dictated it to Daisy. I was trying to figure out how to use the word dictate there, because he never learned to write. And there was another edition made in 1986, and I have the 86 edition, and there is a signed autograph on it. It's sometime in 89 before Daisy died. So I have an autographed copy of Daisy, not Robert. And it's one of the few books I probably won't lend to anybody, and if I let anybody look at it, I'll be hovering over them because I don't want them to mess the book up. It was really hard for me to get a copy. So Anderson closes his narrative by celebrating his friendships. I cannot help but feel that everyone in Box Butte County in western Nebraska, regardless of color, is my friend, and I am proud of it. While evidence points to Anderson's general popularity, he remained demarcated as a unique or unconventional Nebraska. In a study of Anderson's life, Darrell Wax writes that local papers, when noting the activities of local farmers, employed not only the patronizing moniker Uncle Bob when referring to Anderson, but also Zip Coon, the 19th century minstrel construction that mocked urban blacks with middle-class pretenses. Anderson was generally liked, but, as Wax points out, for some of his neighbors, his affability meant that he was a first-class N-word. I should really find a psychologist and get into a deep dive of, I understand the connotation of Zip Coon and Uncle Bob, and I don't have an issue reading that, but I get to that N-word, and I can't say it. It's written out in the quote. But
it's written out, I see it.
I
can type
can't.
it. You just can't say it.
Yeah. And I didn't even type it. I cut and pasted the quote out, so I didn't even type it. That's a me thing, though. So Darrell Wax's piece goes into detail about this. People liked Anderson, but the underside of the community's perception of Negroes in general was evidenced in the residue of terminology that outlasted him and bespoke seamier attitudes. Thus, his ranch later was referred to by some as the N-word place. Here we go again. I can use the word Negro, but I come across the N-word again, and I can't. And maybe it's because in that sense they're not using Negro in a derogatory way. It's the scientific way, not even scientific. The label way, like I'm white.
I think you're apologizing too.
Yeah, I am. I need to just shut up and keep reading. Hemingford area whites often referred to the black rancher as Uncle Bob. Probably started innocently, this patronizing title was alive with the suggestion of attitudes. Uncle and aunt, of course, as applied to blacks, were holdovers from slavery days as a means of addressing blacks. For whites, uncle was a comfortable term, perhaps signaling respect, but at the same time connotating a particular social status. Mr., Mrs., and Miss, terms of respect, were reserved for whites and not loosely employed when referring to blacks. They called up possibilities of social equality that were unacceptable for Negroes. Adults often used the term uncle in direct conversation with Anderson, and parents passed it on to their children. And
we only got rid of Aunt Jemima's syrup how long ago?
Yeah, like 24. And Uncle Ben's rice.
That's still a thing. We didn't get rid of it.
Oh, we didn't get rid of Uncle... Oh,
it's
did
still
we just...
called Uncle Ben's.
Did we just...
Aunt Jemima's got... I don't think it's called that no more. That got
changed.
That got changed, but Uncle Ben didn't. No, I think Uncle Ben's still there. At least in the bulk terms.
Did they just take the picture off? Did they take the caricature off?
Took the character off. To tell you the truth, last time I saw a bag of Uncle Ben's rice, it looked exactly. It had his face on it.
Okay.
And everything, yeah.
I haven't looked in a very long time because I buy basmati rice. I don't like regular white rice.
Buy Xanarese.
The black man whose visits to the ranch were anticipated and whose trips to town brought clusters of young people to exchange pleasantries was Uncle Bob. Another appellation applied to Anderson, Zip Coon, appeared late in 1912 in a newspaper report from his area, Lawn Precinct. Zip Coon, the very funny fellow, the item read, says there are lots of rabbits this fall and they are better than oxtail soup. In ensuing months, there were frequent references to Zip Coon. Early in 1913, he was listed with neighborhood residents who were preparing to sell horses. Later news articles had Zip Coon in town as a transactor of business, as a farmer with his potatoes all dug, and as a caller of Klemke's. It was all great fun, whether meant to cast aspersions or not, but it served to remind people of Anderson's differentness. Connor's bringing his potatoes to town as opposed to Zip Coon's bringing his potatoes to town. I mean, yeah, okay, it's fun. It's just a funny nickname, Robert, but we're not going to use your name when, you're just going to be listed as Zip Coon.
Well, and it doesn't seem like, at least it hasn't been mentioned yet, did Anderson have a problem with this? Or did he just kind of, it was the times and that's just how it was? That's what it is?
That's the takeaway I got from his memoir was, it's not cool, but what am I supposed to do about it? It's...
Well, and I can relate. As a gay man, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
A lot of, me being called a fag is a thing, and it's still a thing. Gay being say, oh, that's gay and everything, still being misused.
Yep.
Less as the new generation is coming up, thankfully. But it's still, and it's still used. It's still used in front of me for people who don't know that I am exactly who they're making fun of. And it's one of those things. Does it hurt? Yeah. Can I fight it? Yeah. I can. I could be that person.
Pick your battles.
But exactly, and I think maybe that's what I'm getting at. It's picking your battles.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, it may sound bizarre to people, but twice last week, I had 2 younger men call me ma'am, and it put a smile on my face. And my eyes are tearing up now because I get looks when I go into the bathroom because I don't look like a conventional woman. And I don't even experience anything that the trans community experiences. But because I don't look like a conventional woman, I have been harassed my whole life and had stuff said to me. And it's like, pick your battles. Are you going to fight an idiot, or do you just go about your day? Does it hurt? Yes, absolutely. But I still need to find a way to keep going. And so when those 2 dudes were referred to me as ma'am both times, and they were younger than you.
It's been kind of ruled out to call women ma'ams nowadays.
Yeah.
It's been kind of pushed out. Miss and ma'am.
I'll take miss or ma'am.
Miss and ma'am, they've been largely, I know a bunch of people who just absolutely refuse. It's like, don't call me Mrs. I mean, teachers now are getting away from that. There's like, call me by my first name. My name is Kate. I'm like, Katie Schneider. She's the biology teacher at WNCC. She started her class that way.
Okay.
Like, do not call me, I think it was Mrs. Schneider. Don't, if I hear that, I will ignore you. Call me by my first name. My name's Katie. Katie, call me Katie. Like, just call me by my name. Not a big deal. And so, and I kind of love that. I love that because me being my age, I fall into that all the time. Mr., Mrs. is how I grew up. And it's usually Mr., Mrs., and then your last name. So, it gets kind of confusing.
Yeah. And so it was nice because, I worked in Gearing Public Schools for 6 years. And the kids that I worked with are just a couple years younger than you, Connor. And I had horrible things said to me. And
horrible.
Those words hurt. Words hurt. I never liked that phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I'm like, no, they hurt worse. They cut deep and they don't go away. So, I just like Robert said, the sores from being beaten as a slave went away, but the sores in his mind never did. And I'm sure this was just another different kind of sore.
To the sticks and stones comment, I think there was a cartoon where someone's being bullied by another kid, and the kid's like, sticks and stones, and the bully ends up saying, not a problem, and he holds up a bunch of sticks and a bunch of stones, and he goes running away. Sticks and stones don't work. Sticks and stones don't work.
So I think he probably did have genuine friends as well. Just like today, there are folks like you and me that have friends of all races and ethnicities, and it's not an issue. You're just a cool person, so I'm a friend with you. And we still have the racists. And so I'm sure that Robert experienced a mix of that as well, even back then.
Well, and it comes down to the same thing. It is people not admitting that what they said or what they think is racist. You know, I had an excellent teacher who was called Mr. Trump. Not that Mr. Trump.
Okay.
Talking about
Someone else.
The infamous in town. If anyone here is listening to me and he knows, and I talk about Mr. Trump in Scottsbluff High School, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. He was a sociology and anthropology teacher, and I took both of his classes, and I think I took economics with him too. But he was very, very good at making you understand what ethnocentrism was and how you cannot get rid of that. And your racism, your racist remarks, comes from that. It comes from your ethnocentrism. I mean, and it kind of goes into ego, but in a nutshell, ethnocentrism is your cultural view on the world. I mean, you can't get rid of it. You have to have a cultural view of the world because you're a part of the world. And so it's how much of the world are you actually accepting culturally versus your own prejudices? And it's really, really fascinating. But he says one thing's really important is you never, ever get rid of it. And I can only say he's true, except in a sci-fi point of view. I would say that if we ever get to the point where we colonize Earth, we colonize Mars, then we become what's called global centrists, which is not necessarily different than ethnocentrism. It's just on a very, very larger scale. So basically the whole we're all good, but then now we have Mars. And now we have our problems against Martians, you know, the stupid Mars people, or, you know, what Mars people thinks about us, you know. So it never stops. It's that centric point of view that we have.
And they briefly touch on that in the TV series Babylon 5, which is one of my favorite series of all times. But they colonized Mars, and then they would call them Marsies, and that was like their equivalent of the N-word. And there were all kinds of problems because now you have like 7th, 8th, 9th generation living on Mars, and the Earthers, you don't know nothing about what it's like being on Mars. And so...
And the only big difference, of course, is we didn't drag anybody to Mars and then made them slaves. Hopefully we don't do
God,
that.
hope not. Oh,
Hopefully
my God.
we don't do that.
I hope
So this ethnocentrism comes really from, one, we never understood what it's like to be black. If you're not black, you're not going to understand.
No.
You're not going to understand what it was like. And so then from the white person's point of view, it's just like, well, what are we supposed to understand that we can't understand? You know, and they get frustrated and they get mad. And there's a lot of, it's really, really hard to get on the level with people. With people of my own race.
Yes.
My race being white. You know, when you're trying to talk to a racist person or someone who's coming off awfully racist and trying to explain to them why they're coming off so racist, you know, it really does come to sometimes beating your head on a brick wall. You know, Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl is a perfect example. There's a lot of me banging my head against the wall. It's like, what the hell are you guys going on about?
To me, it was a neat little show. I don't understand the language, but I've listened to foreign music my whole life. So it was just another 15 minutes of foreign music.
I mean, there is subtitles. I hope people know that there's such a thing called Spanish to English subtitles. I mean, there was a way for you guys to understand the music. It's not my fault. It's not his fault that you couldn't do it. You could do it. You just had to think and try. It's just like you go to any other movie with subtitles, a good French film or a good other film, and there's subtitles. You don't go bitch about the film.
No.
Stupid French film. How dare they do it all in France? It's like they don't give me no subtitles. The subtitles are out the bottom, bitch.
Yeah. And for me, where did I watch it? I forget where I watched it because I didn't watch Super Bowl. I didn't know anything about it till the next day. And so I think it was on YouTube. I watched a video, and I didn't even think to turn the subtitles on. My brain went, okay, this isn't in English, but what's the show? And I followed the show, and I'm like, oh, okay, I know a little bit, not a lot, of Puerto Rican history. I'm like, oh, I get what that is. Oh, okay, I get that, you know. And I'm just like, this is all about celebrating Puerto Rican culture. Okay.
And I always try to turn on my subtitles just for your own safety, because one time I came across something that was Norse. I thought that was really cool. Turned out to be a neo-Nazi rally. And I'm glad I turned on the subtitles. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have known that. So subtitles, guys, again, do your work. Do your work. It's not that you have to learn Spanish. No one ever asked you to learn the language. And we're getting off subject here, but it goes back to.
But it goes back to race. It goes
back to race too. No. I don't think I've ever had anybody, black or any other culture, ask me to. Like, you have to know this. You have to understand this about our culture. You have to know this. It's like I can't possibly know it.
Yeah.
And so I have to do my best, is what you're saying. Yeah. And, we have to try to get along, is what you're saying. Yeah. It's like, and I get that. But it involves both people doing more work. And I think there's just been a lot of people yelling and just shaking their heads in frustration. It's like,
and a lot of people thinking they're right and screaming over someone. Yeah. And because they screamed the loudest, well, then they won. And to me, conversations like that aren't about winning. It's about understanding somebody else. Mm-hmm. And some of the best conversations I ever had were just basic shooting the shit conversations when I was in Tanzania. Yeah. And it didn't matter what the subject was on. You just had to be willing and open to listen and ask questions and to say, I don't know, and I don't understand what you said. I heard the words, I understand English, but I don't understand where you came up with that. Can you explain that to me? And being willing to do that, and then talking to someone who's willing to take that as, oh, what I said wasn't understood, so let me find another way to explain it. Like, if you don't understand a math problem, your teacher will show you a different way, and you're still getting to the same end result, but you didn't understand one way. And it was just the way that they chose to explain something. I didn't have certain points of reference, so can you do it different?
Irene and I at Tanagra. Irene and Connor at Tanagra. That was a Star Trek trope, guys, for anyone who doesn't know that. Great Star Trek episode, by the way.
That's a fantastic episode. And that's...
really goes back to what we're talking about.
Yeah. That's a prime case.
But Picard gets stuck on an alien planet with another alien that both of them cannot understand each other whatsoever. And the whole episode is about them trying to understand each other.
And the basic thing on Star Trek is you've got a universal translator in your communication badge.
Yeah, and this one didn't work.
And this didn't work because they communicated in relation to things. So instead of saying, Connor and Irene do the podcast on Wednesday mornings, it would be Connor and Irene, Connor at Irene's house when the sun rises. Yeah. And so because there wasn't an alphabet and your noun, verb, adjective. It was all things in relation to other things. The universal translator didn't work, and so they had to figure out how to talk to each other. Yeah. And
so again, going back to all this, if your subtitles break or if you decide not to use them, still do your best. Be like Picard.
Yes. There you go.
Find the inner Picard in you and try to find yourself at Tanagra.
Yes. So on November 30th, 1930, Robert, Daisy, her brother, and a friend were in a car accident near Union, Nebraska, and that's on the eastern part of the state. Union is a small town about 40 miles east of Lincoln, Nebraska. They were returning from a visit to Robert's brother in Arkansas when the car left the road and overturned on loose gravel. Daisy had a few bruises. Ernest Graham had been driving and escaped unhurt. Robert died en route to St. Elizabeth Hospital in Lincoln. He was 87 years old. And, because I'm very much like that Star Trek episode, I'm very visual and I connect things. When I read St. Elizabeth Hospital, I immediately knew where he was taken. Because I lived in Lincoln for the first time 8 years and the second time almost 3. Mm-hmm. So I know Lincoln well, and I'm like, first, I didn't even know St. Elizabeth was there then in 1930, but I know where it's at.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
But again, 1930, I get it makes sense. Lincoln was big by then, and they would have had a hospital.
Yeah. At the time of his death, his 2,080 acres was valued at $75,000. That's $1,413,026 in 2026. So decent operation. Yeah. According to Moose, by the time of his death in 1930, Anderson's affluence had become fleeting and unstable. His property had remained mortgaged throughout his life, and just 8 months before he died, he deeded his property, mortgage and all, to his wife Daisy. And when we get to the Daisy episode, we'll get into it, but she wasn't able to keep it afterwards. But that's for another episode.
And that's interesting. So he must have known he was getting along in age.
Yeah.
Because 8 months before he died in the car accident, he just figured,
Yeah, because he was 79 when they got married, and that was in 22, and he died in 30. So 79 and 8 would be 87? Mm-hmm. Yes, 87. So he was 87. So he was either 86 or 87, depending on his birthday, and when he transferred it to her. He probably knew, and given the times, we're talking 1930,
he lived to a good age.
He lived to a good age, but if he had not done this, he didn't have any children. She's not getting that.
Yeah, and she wouldn't have gotten it. So no, he was smart. He knew the laws. Yeah, and how things work.
Yeah. So he was trying to make sure she did all right. And she did do all right. She just wasn't able to keep on the farm, and somehow he was always able to juggle stuff, and it's just probably not a thing that she could do. So I'm going to quote from Wax again. The Hemingford newspaper reported that the community was shocked at the news of Anderson's death. The accident and his obituary were given front-page coverage, accompanied by a picture of Anderson and GAR members of homesteading years. I don't remember what GAR stands for, but it has to do with the bunch of folks that homesteaded out there that were still around. Of the 13 men in the photograph, only A.M. Miller survived Anderson. The newspaper account lauded him. He won and retained until the day of his death the respect and friendship of his neighbors and friends in this community. Having taken land in a fortunate section and having good business judgment, he gained much of this world's goods. He was noted for his honesty, kindness, and generosity. It was a generous story about a man who had been, in his way, one of Hemingford's leading citizens. His rural neighbors were even more deeply touched by his death. So at the same time, he's still dealing with the racism, but Hemingford continues to be a small community today. They're still calling him by these names. They probably don't think much of it, just like when I was a kid, my mom went to flea markets and Jewed people down. She didn't think of it as a racial slur. It's what she grew up with. Yeah. But the thing was, when I told Mom, when I learned what that word was,
she stopped.
She was like, oh my God, what word am I supposed to use? I'm like, haggle, Mom. Use haggle.
Don't use anything offensive.
Yeah. But where I grew up in New York, that was a common term,
Oh, I bet there's a bunch.
There was a few others. But when she learned that it was wrong, she changed the way that she, talked about things. And I think this was probably a case for Robert, too. Like, he's probably thinking, yeah, that's what they use. I don't, this guy generally isn't racist, but he's using this term anyway. Or maybe the dude is racist, and Robert was just like, whatever, you're just racist, dude. I don't know.
And I got stories. See, but when I was growing up, I guess my parents, though I don't know how, were usually pretty savvy about offensive words. Mm-hmm. It just, honestly, even certain nicknames that really were just nicknames, mm-hmm. my parents wouldn't let me say, even if it just sounded offensive. Mm-hmm. So, and my mom always gave me her story, how she figured that out. She went to basketball in Rapid City. She mm-hmm. went to a park, a bunch of people playing basketball, and they were all black kids playing basketball. She was the only white girl. She comes up, and I guess they have they're like chocolate covered. I don't know if they're the old chocolate covered potatoes or the old twin beans. I don't know exactly what she was talking about. They used to be called N-word toes. That's what they call them.
Oh, those are the nuts. Paul likes those kind of nuts. Brazil nuts.
Okay, so the Brazil nuts.
Yeah.
Chocolate covered Brazil nuts.
They can be chocolate covered, yeah. Oh, yeah, I heard that term as well.
So my mom goes and asks the kids if they want some, and uses that word. She almost got the living shit kicked out of her. So by the time I came around, this was when she was, of course, was a kid. So by the time I came around, that was far from my mind. It was, you were never allowed to say that. You were never allowed. I mean, and my parents would show me the movies, point at those words like no, no, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched Roots at a pretty young age. I mean, it was still one of those things. It's like, this is how it is, and this is what you don't do, and this is what you don't say. So.
Yeah, and again, your mom used it, found out that it was not good.
She fucked around and found out at a young age.
Yeah.
And I'm sure another thing that's helped both my mom and my dad were they were civil servants of the community. So they had to treat people with respect, no matter what their personal thoughts were. No matter what was
going on. Yep. So, and that's the thing. One of the things I like about your mom is, for the most part, she's willing to listen to your side and change her mind.
She has her moments.
Yeah,
she has her moments that make me cringe. But,
yeah, there are one or two things that you have warned me about, so I just don't bring those topics up, and we're good.
Well,
because you're working on her with it, not me.
I also go to the old Greek philosophy. It is a parent's job to better the next generation, not necessarily for the next generation to better their parents. I mean, it really is about us bringing forward the future. So as much as I love my mother, I really don't try or even care to go too much back onto her. I care more about what our children think, like what the next generation's thinking, what they're putting out into the world.
Yep.
I mean, sorry, guys, you only live on this earth for so long, and your opinion does not matter.
No. And I kind of go down that road, except for I don't let people get away with things that are older than me. Oh, well, she's 83. What do you expect? And I'm like, My grandma died in 2011 when she was 88, and if you used the N-word around her, at 88 years old, that 5'2" woman would smack you in the face for it. So you don't get away with crap like that with me just because you're older.
I say you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. I'm not going to argue about it. Because, again, I'm not going to argue with my elders about their good old days or their experience of their good old days. I'm not going to argue with that. But I'm telling you, it's 2026, and your good old days are long gone.
Yep. We don't live like that anymore.
And whatever you think and whatever you loved about them, they're long gone. You need to get over it.
Yep. So back to Robert. He is one of the pioneer settlers coming here when there were no railroads and Alliance was but a mere place. He had always been a respectable, kind-hearted friend and neighbor, always ready to render assistance when needed. Although he has left us, his kind acts will remain bright in the hearts of his fellow men. And that kind of came through when I was reading his memoir, that he was just a kind soul, just wanted to help other people, just do his own thing and mostly be left alone. But you need some help, I'll come help you, just the kind of person I think everybody looks for in a friend. His remains were shipped by rail from Omaha to Hemingford, where they arrived on December 3rd. The high esteem in which Robert Anderson was held, the Ledger reported, was in evidence by the vast number of friends gathered at the depot and his home to greet the silent war veteran and former resident of Box Butte County. Bobby Anderson, as he was called, was given the honor and respect due him. The body was taken to his ranch. His coffin was a plain pine box brought out from town by neighbor Henry Rogowski. The Methodist Church was packed at 2 p.m. December 4th for the services. The Reverend W.B. Bliss officiated. Anderson's body was buried with military honors at the cemetery. The Grand Chaplains of the Nebraska GAR from Omaha and the chaplain of the Alliance chapter conducted the ceremony. Later, the standard engraved granite marker provided by the U.S. government for veterans was set in place. It reads, Robert Ball, the name Anderson, because the name Anderson was used after his service. So his headstone says Robert Ball because it came from the government. The government lists what you...
Anderson because he didn't have Anderson.
Yeah. So Robert Ball, 125th Colored Infantry, Company G. Today you can visit Anderson's cabin at Dobby's Frontier Town in Alliance, and that's on our list in the near future to write about Dobby's. It was on the verge of collapse before it was moved and rebuilt in 1995. It is the second original home of Robert Anderson. The soddy was the first, and he lived in it until the log cabin was finished. He hauled wood from the Pine Ridge area and used it to build a house. Later, he built the wooden frame building he and Daisy lived in. The other building became a tack room and entrance to the root cellar for him. The logs are hand-sawn and hewn. When the building arrived at Dobby's, it was brought in on a flatbed trailer in pieces. The main center beam is still the original, but other pieces have been replaced. According to Dobby's Frontier Town, Anderson's closest neighbor was 5 miles away. He wore out 3 good sets of oxen before he bought his first tractor, and the bank loan that paid for it took several years to repay. And that's probably why he still was in debt, because a lot of farmers are in debt. They get a new piece of equipment.
They're all in debt, yeah. I've never met a farmer who's not in debt.
Yeah.
They're all, to our minds, they're like, oh, you have a wonderful house, large family, you must be a very wealthy, good, prosperous farmer. And it's like, no, we're on the line.
Yeah.
We're on the line. It's like we're really good at what we do, but we're on the line.
Yep.
I mean, we're not wealthy. We're always in debt, just like everybody else, and probably actually a little bit more in debt than most other people.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. And considering when he died, Daisy was in her late 20s, 27, I think, when he died. She probably didn't really have the know-how or the wherewithal to do the kind of work that needed to be done to keep the farm up, to keep the payments up and stuff. But that's in our episode with Daisy. Anyway, most of Robert's life was spent alone. Anderson only went to school one winter and learned how to sign his name. He could only read a few words, and I've been quoting from his memoir, which he told to Daisy, and she wrote down for him. Even though he dealt with racism, never had children, and married late, I don't think he would want us to feel bad for him. Near the end of his memoir, he writes, I have a good farm, well stocked with plenty of horses, cows, and farming machinery, with shade trees, fruit trees, grapes, berries, and have money in the bank to tide me over my old age when I am unable to earn more. A slave at the age of 20, penniless at the age of 45, I am a rich man today. And I believe he means more than just all the property and cows and horses he has. He endured the hardships of early life out here in western Nebraska and was successful. Many left and went back east after their first failures. And there are many, many, many stories of people couldn't make it and they just sold up to the railroad or prospectors or whatever. It was not easy to make a go of it out here in the early days.
Now they just give it all to Bill Gates. I shouldn't have made a jab at Bill. Sorry, Bill. But you really stop buying up property out here.
Yeah.
We got plenty.
Yeah. Robert just got back up and kept going, and he never forgot who he was. And so I want to read to you from the end of his memoir. I belong to the black race, and I am not ashamed of it. I have seen considerable trouble and hard times, but there was always a consolation in thinking that it was not as bad as it might have been. I have had some might good times and have enjoyed life immensely. I have found that happiness and enjoyment is where we make it, and there is a heap of satisfaction in knowing that I did my best. I have worked hard with honest and earnest intent, and feel that my labors have been rewarded. I have always tried to be fair and honest in my dealings with others, and have always tried to give an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I have friends all over the United States and cannot help but feel that everyone in Box Butte County and western Nebraska, regardless of color, is my friend, and I am proud of it. I always try to attend to my own business and never interfere with anyone else. After all is said and done, I find that there is no greater rule for making and holding friends, for happiness and contentment and real enjoyment in life, than in doing unto others as I would like them to do unto me, and to try and do it just a little bit better. And he wrote much more eloquently the whole reason why we do this, why I have my blog, why I have my Substack.
Oh, why we have the golden rule.
Yeah. And I think that he genuinely just didn't look at others the same way that you or I might when they called him a zip coon or talked down to him and called him, Uncle Bob.
But this is something I think that we can definitely learn from him, because I do, as I was saying before, there's a lot of people in this town that don't like me, that because of what I am, don't agree with me because of what I am, and despise it. But you should do best not to despise them in turn. You should just try to understand them. And do your best to live, again, by the golden rule. Yep. You start effing with them, you're giving you more pretense for them to F with you. So.
Yep. And early on at the Star-Herald, I had the health beat, and Betsy Vidlak was my contact at Kaplan, and she's now the CEO. She's worked her way up. She's also the mayor in town now as well.
Did she make it to mayor?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Last election.
I thought the last election she didn't make it. No, and then she did? I'm confused. It was years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know when the last mayor election was.
Well, because Scotts Bluff does it weird. You elect your city council members, and then the 5 of them decide who's going to be mayor.
Oh, that's probably
we don't actually elect them.
So what I was seeing with her was her to get on city council.
Yeah.
And that's what she got on.
She got on city council and then became mayor.
Gotcha, yeah.
And
that was the one that's like, hey, get involved in politics and make sure you keep up. Yeah. Good job, Connor.
But Betsy is one of the kindest people that I've ever met, one of the fairest bosses I've ever had. And one thing that she taught me was, if you're reaching your hand out, it should be to lift somebody up. And that you should always meet people where they're at. And I think that's what Robert lived. These people are calling me Uncle Bob, but that's where they're at. That's who they are. And he still considered them a friend. So, you can, that just kind of trickles down through the ages. He didn't have those words.
Yeah. But it's a good lesson to learn for both sides of the political spectrum, and everyone in between. I mean, it's just... especially the both extremes. Yeah. It's like we're not doing each other any good by doing all this conflict and fighting.
And when you sit and you talk to people, most people, I'll use your mom as an example. There's that one little thing that we don't agree on, and most other things we can sit and have a conversation about. And that's where most people are in the world. You and I can like you mentioned, Jesse Jackson passing away. I'm going to go with the good things that Jesse Jackson did and leave it at that. Just because that's not what our podcast is about. But I also know that Connor and I can stop this recording and have a conversation about it, and our friendship will not change because of it.
Exactly.
And that's the way it should be for everything. And it's just he was kind of creepy towards women. So and
he wasn't perfect. But then again, neither was Martin Luther King.
No,
neither was
none of them were perfect.
Any of the civil rights leaders
and
groups.
And that's where you have to find those lines. And Robert didn't seem to have issues with it. He knew where those lines were. He knew who those people were, and he probably knew that person would call him Uncle Bob today. But if Robert said, hey, I need some help shoeing my horses tomorrow, that person would be there to help them. And you just got to meet people where they're at. And I think in every aspect of life, that's good advice to have. I kind of always tried to live by that, but I didn't have words for it till Betsy spewed them out of her mouth. And then I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe one day we can get Betsy to come and sit down and we can do a story on Betsy. Anyway, that's it for this time. This was about Robert Ball Anderson, and he was very influential out here. He was the first black homesteader out here. It would behoove you, for lack of a better word, to see if you can find a copy of his memoir. I don't know if it's on the Internet Archive. I wanted a copy in my hands that I was finally able to track down. But there are a lot of articles out there.
They don't have any copies of the books down at the Dobbies or Dobbs?
Not that I know of.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would have thought they would have had some.
And I don't even know if it's in print anymore. I don't even
Maybe
think
it's not.
I don't even think it has a ISBN number. I think it deserved to, if I was teaching at college and I was teaching about early settlers out here, Robert would be on my list and his memoir would be required reading.
And it's funny because we did go, I did go out to Robert Anderson's cabin and learn a bit about him as a kid. When I was younger.
Yeah.
That was a part, I think it was in high school.
Yeah.
I think we went out to Alliance to Dobbies.
Dobbies, yeah. And that's what, I'm trying to remember Dobby's full name right now, but we're going to do an episode on him. But that was his whole thing, was he was like, his cabin can't disappear. This is important to history. And it's kind of like me. I'm trying to find my birth certificate right now that's somewhere in my house, and I'm looking through all these papers I've saved. There's no way I'm going to throw them out because I'm like, this is important to history, this is important to history. And they're all like articles, and I keep them because they're important, and I think people should know about them and read about them. And if something were to ever happen and this news article is no longer on the internet, well, I've got it right here.
I'll just be happy in the next 20, 30 years people can still read. Yeah,
that too. That's
be enough for
me.
My
gosh, that's a huge issue too.
I set my bars rather low.
But most everything was available via a PDF or to read online. The some of the Nebraska history stuff you could read online, but you had to pay to get a PDF. But you could read the article online. So pretty much anything you want to know about Robert is available online. There was the Moose book. You need the book. You can read excerpts here and there, but if you want to read the whole book, you need to get the whole book. But all in all, that was I've been wanting to do this for a while, and hopefully I did Robert justice. So come back next time when we'll have more news stories. For now, I'm Irene.
And I'm Connor.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.